The film begins by introducing a boy named Jiho, who has just lost his mother. At that moment, the 8-year-old Jiho believes that his mother has not passed away, but has merely gone to a faraway place in the land of clouds, an idea he got from a fairy tale book his mother used to read to him. The book tells the story of a mother penguin who died and went to the land of clouds. There, the mother penguin watches over her children and eventually returns when the rainy season arrives. Because of this, Jiho firmly believes that his mother will return like the mother penguin when the rainy season comes, so he eagerly awaits the rainy season by watching the weather forecast. On the other hand, Woo Jin, Jiho's father, has to raise him alone after the death of his wife, Suwa. As time goes by, Woo Jin lives his life without the presence of his beloved Suwa by working as a janitor at a swimming pool facility. Although he is often approached by a woman at his workplace, Woo Jin seems uninterested because he is still haunted by the memory of Suwa. He even refuses to be set up with anyone by his friend Hongo. Apparently, Hongo is a high school friend of Woo Jin and is considered like an uncle by Jiho. On the other hand, Jiho always visits Hongo's bakery after school, where he waits for his father to pick him up. Until one day, Jiho has to represent his class in a relay race that involves the participation of his father. This makes Jiho sad because he knows that his father can't participate in the race due to a health condition. Hearing this, Hongo tries to cheer him up and says that he will replace Woo Jin in the relay race. This makes Jiho happy, and eventually, Woo Jin comes to pick him up. After that, Jiho tells his father everything. Not long after, the day of the race arrived, but Jiho never expected that his father would come to participate in the race with him. During the race, Woo Jin's illness suddenly flared up. However, because Woo Jin loved Jiho so much, he ignored his illness. When Woo Jin was about to win the race, he suddenly fainted because he couldn't withstand the effects of his illness. On the way home, Jiho apologized to his father for causing him to faint. After that, Jiho said that the rainy season would arrive soon, and he was confident that his mother would come, just like in the storybook he used to hear. A few days later, the rainy season finally arrived, and Jiho was very happy. Full of excitement, he ran to the old train station not far from his house, accompanied by Woo Jin. At that moment, Jiho kept searching for his mother and didn't want to go home despite Woo Jin's attempts to persuade him. After waiting for a long time, Jiho still couldn't find his mother, and Woo Jin eventually forced him to go home. On the way back, Jiho and Woo Jin suddenly saw a woman who had fainted in a train tunnel. As they rushed to help her, they were shocked because the woman looked exactly like Suwa. Seeing this, Jiho felt happy and was convinced that the woman was his mother, who had come from the land of clouds. Unfortunately, the woman's name was indeed Suwa, but she didn't remember anything, including memories of her husband and son. After that, Woo Jin took Suwa home. At home, Jiho kept saying that his mother had come from the land of clouds. Seeing this, Woo Jin became increasingly confused about what was really happening and forbade Jiho from talking about the land of clouds, fearing that Suwa might leave them again. Since that day, Woo Jin became enthusiastic and hurried to finish his work so he could come home early. The same went for Jiho, who couldn't wait to come home and play with his mother. At night, after Jiho had fallen asleep, Woo Jin told Suwa about how he first met her. It all began when they were in high school, and Suwa was a very intelligent classmate. However, Suwa was hard to approach for other students, while Woo Jin was a swimming athlete who only attended half-day classes, so they rarely talked to each other. Until one day, during swimming practice, Suwa suddenly started drowning, and Woo Jin, who saw this, immediately saved her. From that moment, Woo Jin began to like Suwa. Unfortunately, Woo Jin never dared to express his feelings to her, until Hongo found out that Woo Jin had feelings for Suwa. Hongo then gave Woo Jin advice on how to approach a woman. But every method suggested by Hongo failed. One day, during a dance class, Woo Jin and Suwa were paired by the teacher. Unfortunately, Woo Jin squandered the opportunity because he was so nervous that he ended up making Suwa's nose bleed. Since that day, they never spoke again until the last day of school, when Suwa suddenly approached Hongo and Woo Jin. At that moment, Suwa asked Woo Jin to write something in her yearbook as a keepsake. This made Woo Jin very happy. But after writing something, Woo Jin's pen was accidentally taken by Suwa, which made Woo Jin panic, although he was still too nervous to approach her. After graduating from high school, Wu Jin continued his studies at a nearby university to become a swimmer, while Suwa continued her education at a prestigious university in Seoul. As time went by, Wu Jin finally mustered the courage to call Suwa, accompanied by Honggo. But when the call was answered by Suwa, Wu Jin tried to hang up. Seeing this, Honggo stopped him, so Wu Jin ended up answering the call. Nervously and awkwardly, Wu Jin asked about the pin that Suwa had taken that day. Fortunately, Suwa responded positively and asked Wu Jin to meet her in front of her university the next day. After meeting with Suwa, Wu Jin took her to a restaurant, and there they became a bit closer. When night fell and it started drizzling, Wu Jin mustered up the courage to say something to Suwa. Unfortunately, she had already boarded the bus, and she said she wouldn't return until winter ended. Hearing this, Wu Jin quickly ran after her, causing the bus driver to stop. On the bus, Wu Jin asked if he could send letters to Suwa. Hearing this, Suwa smiled and wiped Wu Jin's wet face. Eventually, they started dating and began going out together. One day, while practicing swimming, Wu Jin suddenly fainted in the pool. The doctor who examined him said that Wu Jin had a brain problem, and if Wu Jin felt nervous or tense, he would immediately faint. Because of his illness, Wu Jin decided to quit being a swimmer, and he also ended his relationship with Suwa without telling her what was really happening. For more than a year, Wu Jin tried to forget Suwa. Unfortunately, he never succeeded, and eventually, Wu Jin decided to go to Seoul because he wanted to see Suwa even if it was from a distance. Upon arriving, Wu Jin saw Suwa being picked up by another man. This broke Wu Jin's heart, but he was also happy, realizing that he wasn't good enough for her. After that, Wu Jin considered everything to be over. Until one day, Suwa suddenly called him and asked Wu Jin to meet. Although feeling confused, Wu Jin decided to go meet Suwa. When Suwa got off the train, she immediately approached and hugged Wu Jin, saying that everything was predestined. Sometime later, Wu Jin eventually married Suwa, and their first son, Jiho, was born. But when Jiho was 8 years old, Suwa died due to an illness. This forced Wu Jin to become both a father and mother to Jiho, until Suwa suddenly reappeared, although she had no memory of Wu Jin and Jiho. The next day, Suwa found a storybook about a mother penguin that she used to read to Jiho. At that moment, Suwa cried when she saw a documentary video of Jiho as a baby. Moreover, she realized that her time in this world was limited, so she began teaching Jiho many things, such as cooking eggs, washing clothes, cleaning the house, and even how to shampoo his own hair. Seeing this, Wu Jin felt very happy about his wife's return. But as Wu Jin grew more in love with his wife, he became worried that the rainy season would soon end, which would separate them again. That night, on Jiho's birthday, Wu Jin and Suwa held a small celebration, where they both tried to appear happy in front of Jiho, even though they were actually sad, because Wu Jin knew that Suwa would soon leave. After that, Suwa asked Wu Jin to always take care of Jiho. She also said that if she returned to the land of clouds, she would always wait for him there. The next day, Jiho's school held an art performance event. But Jiho felt sad because he didn't see his parents there. Meanwhile, Wu Jin was unconscious after saving a co-worker who was drowning in the swimming pool. On the other hand, Suwa, unaware of this, kept trying to contact Wu Jin. After getting no response, Suwa eventually went to Jiho's school without Wu Jin. Upon arriving, Suwa saw Jiho singing with a sad face. After that, Jiho's classmates were asked to come forward one by one and talk about their strengths. Finally, it was Jiho's turn, but he looked confused. However, when Jiho realized that his mother had come, Jiho finally spoke about all the things his mother had taught him at home, which made Suwa was moved to tears. After the art performance ended, Suwa hurried away as signs of the changing season had begun. Meanwhile, Jiho, who had just learned about this, ran home to look for his mother, but he couldn't find her. In the end, Jiho went to the tunnel to catch up with his mother. At that moment, Suwa, seeing Jiho approaching, told him that it was time for her to go. Hearing this, Jiho suddenly apologized to his mother, saying that if he had not been born, his mother would not have gotten sick, and she could have lived longer with his father. Unexpectedly, Jiho had heard that the cause of his mother's death was her deteriorating health after giving birth. Upon hearing this, Suwa tried to convince Jiho that what he was thinking was not true. Sua emphasized that his parents were very happy to have him, and they would never have experienced that joy if Ji-ho had never been a part of their lives. After that, Sua asked Ji-ho to take care of his father, as he had promised before. Meanwhile, Woo-jin was struggling to reach Sua, even though he was receiving medical treatment and his condition was still unstable. After giving his best effort, Woo-jin managed to catch up with Sua and Ji-ho in the tunnel. Not long after that event, Woo-jin and Ji-ho continued to live their lives well, as Sua had wished. Woo-jin, who initially worked as a janitor, was even promoted to a swimming instructor. One night, Woo-jin found a diary that Sua had written upon her return. In the diary, she recounted the first time she saw Woo-jin in a small alley. At that moment, it was raining, and Woo-jin deliberately closed his umbrella so that Sua could pass. From that moment on, Sua started liking Woo-jin, and she never expected that Woo-jin also had the same feelings for her. But whenever Sua had a chance to be alone with Woo-jin, for some reason, Sua always felt unlucky. She also wrote that she knew when Woo-jin saw her with another man in front of the university. Actually, that man was a classmate, and when Sua saw Woo-jin there, she immediately got out of her friend's car and ran to chase after him. However, Sua was suddenly hit by a car, which left her in a coma for weeks. When Sua woke up from her coma, she found herself in the train tunnel where Woo-jin and Ji-ho found her. At that moment, Sua couldn't believe that she had landed in her own future, where she was married to Woo-jin and had a child named Ji-ho. In reality, Sua was still young, having just turned 25. On the other hand, after parting ways with Woo-jin and Ji-ho in the tunnel, Sua returned to her previous state. Waking up from her coma in a hospital after being in critical condition for 6 weeks. Since that incident, Sua was confused about making decisions, because if she chose to marry Woo-jin, it meant she only had 8 years left to live before she died. And if Sua chose to marry someone else, she might live longer, but there was no guarantee that she would be happy. In the end, after some contemplation, Sua decided to live with Woo-jin and accept her fate as Ji-ho's mother in the future. This decision was made when Sua called Woo-jin, and they met at the train station, exactly as Woo-jin had described before. The story then concluded. Moral lesson from the story: don't trust fairy tales to plan your family reunions, or you might end up waiting for a penguin in a tunnel. Remember, weather forecasts aren't invitations to the land of clouds.